What if a killer could strike anywhere, at any time, and vanish without a trace? What if the person sitting next to you on a plane or walking past you on the street was capable of planning murder with cold, methodical precision? Israel Keyes was that man. Over more than a decade, he traveled across the United States, committing crimes so calculated it seemed impossible to catch him. He wasn't impulsive. He didn't leave signatures. He didn't crave attention or notoriety. Every crime was planned, every move deliberate, every victim carefully chosen. From the forests of Alaska to the streets of New York, from quiet towns in Vermont to bustling cities in Texas, Keyes's violence knew no boundaries. He was a serial killer, a burglar, a bank robber, an arsonist, and a kidnapper, a man who blended into society while hiding a darkness that no one could detect. Investigators confirmed at least 4 murders, but evidence suggests that the true number could be far higher. How many lives did he really take, and why did he strike some people while sparing others? Arrested in March 2012, Keyes appeared to cooperate at first, but he took his own life before he could face justice, leaving behind only fragments of the terrifying truth. The evidence he left hints at a criminal mind more methodical, meticulous, and chilling than most could ever imagine. A man who treated murder as if it were a business, executing it with precision and care. This is the case of Israel Keyes, a man who moved across the country like a ghost, leaving behind a trail of fear, unanswered questions, and victims whose families were robbed not just of life, but of closure. How could one man commit crimes on such a scale without being caught for years? What drove him to plan and execute such horrors? And even now, after his death, how much of his dark legacy remains hidden, locked away in the corners of his mind? In this case, we will explore the life, crimes, and terrifying methods of Israel Keyes, the serial killer who proved that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who are almost impossible to see coming.
Israel Keyes was born on January 7, 1978, in Richmond, Utah, the second of 10 children in the Keyes family. His parents, Heidi and John Jeffrey "Jeff" Keyes, were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and originally lived in Torrance, California. His father had served a mission in Germany before eventually leaving the LDS Church. When Israel was 5, the family moved to a remote area north of Colville, Washington, settling on a plot of land where they lived in a one-room cabin without electricity or running water. The family was largely isolated from society, and investigators later suspected that Israel may have experienced abuse during this period. In Washington, the Keyes family attended a small church called the Ark, which followed white supremacist Christian identity beliefs. The family also became acquainted with their neighbors, the family of Chevy Cahoe, who would later be convicted of a triple murder in 1996. Eventually, the Keyes children were enrolled in homeschooling until 1983, and their early life was marked by extreme isolation and strict religious rules. From a young age, Israel demonstrated unusual behavior. He hunted for food, helped with farm work, and performed chores to support the family. By his teenage years, he had developed a fascination with violence. He openly admitted to shooting animals, including tying a live deer to a tree and skinning it, and was known to set fires and break into houses. These behaviors often alienated him from peers, and he increasingly chose to operate alone. As he grew older, Keyes's antisocial tendencies intensified. He stole guns from neighbors, sometimes selling them locally, and tortured animals in front of others, an activity he found disturbing yet entertaining. His parents occasionally intervened, forcing him to return stolen items and apologize, but his behavior continued to isolate him.
By the age of 14, he was tall, strong, and increasingly independent, preferring to keep his darker impulses hidden from others. Despite these troubling behaviors, Keyes developed practical skills, becoming a skilled carpenter by 16 and building his own cabin. He also began keeping a journal that combined daily reflections with biblical quotes, documenting personal thoughts and perceived sins. His family moved several times, including a period in Smyrna, Maine, where they lived in an Amish-style community producing maple syrup. His mother maintained strict religious control, forbidding certain activities like music and forcing the children to hide from their parents to experience normal teenage life. During this period, Keyes rejected the family faith entirely. After declaring himself an atheist and clashing with his parents, he was expelled from the household and cut off from his younger siblings. Later, he became interested in Satanism and even began planning a ritualistic murder, signaling the early formation of the violent tendencies that would later define his criminal career. In the late 1990s, Israel Keyes abducted a teenage girl near the Deschutes River in Oregon and assaulted her before letting her go. The victim survived, but the attack revealed early signs of the violent path Keyes would later follow. On July 9, 1998, Keyes moved to New York and enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he served until 2001. He achieved the rank of specialist and was assigned to Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division. During his time in the Army, Keyes completed a month-long preliminary course for Ranger training and was stationed at Fort Lewis in Washington and Fort Hood in Texas, with additional deployments abroad, including time spent in Sinai, Egypt. While overseas, he reportedly made disturbing comments to fellow soldiers, stating he would like to kill one of them. At Fort Lewis, Keyes served on a mortar team. His former Army colleagues described him as quiet and reserved, someone who mostly kept to himself. Outside of duty, he had a tendency to drink heavily on weekends, often consuming entire bottles of wild turkey bourbon. In February 2001, he was arrested for driving under the influence in Thurston County, Washington, resulting in a $350 fine following a plea agreement. Keyes also had an unusual interest in the hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse, displaying posters of the group in the barracks. For his service, Keyes received an Army Achievement Medal for his role as a gunner and assistant gunner from December 1998 to July 2001. He was honorably discharged and later relocated to Nia Bay, Washington. After leaving the Army, Keyes settled in Nia Bay, a community on the Makah Reservation in Washington's Olympic Peninsula. There, he entered into a relationship with a Native American woman named Tammy Hawkins, whom he had met online in late 2000. The couple had a daughter named Lainey. Their relationship eventually ended, and at the time of Keyes' arrest, he was dating Kimberly Anderson, a nurse. Keyes had a strong interest in violent movies and heavy metal music, including bands such as Megadeth and Lacuna Coil, which he often played loudly in his truck. In 2007, he founded a construction business in Alaska called Keyes Construction, working as a handyman, contractor, and general construction worker. He earned a reputation as a skilled and reliable worker, though some female clients reported feeling uneasy around him due to sudden dark expressions or brief flashes of anger. Keyes also struggled with seasonal depression, at times threatening suicide when his girlfriend had taken his whiskey, and he was known to skip work during the winter months. Beyond Washington and Alaska, he maintained ties to New York, owning a 10-acre property with a rundown cabin in the town of Constable. Giovanna Tyler, a 29-year-old woman from Tacoma, Washington, was reported missing in 2004. Her disappearance has occasionally been mentioned in media coverage as potentially linked to Israel Keys, though no definitive connection has been confirmed. Keys himself admitted to investigators that he had buried or submerged a victim in a lake near Nia Bay, Washington, sometime between July and October 2001. He also claimed to have disposed of other bodies in the state, prompting law enforcement to review unsolved cases in Washington for possible connections. Keys confessed to killing 5 people in Washington state. Authorities, including the state police and FBI, actively investigated his activities in the region. He described killing a young couple between 2001 and 2005, claiming he struck the man with a shovel and strangled the woman before burying both. He also admitted to 2 additional victims between 2005 and 2006, one of whom he said was dumped in Lake Crescent, Washington. Despite these confessions, Keys had no prior felony record in the state, though he had minor driving-related offenses. Law enforcement continued reviewing unsolved murders and missing persons cases for possible links to his crimes. In 2012, a potential victim, later referred to as Lewis County Jane Doe, was identified. The woman had been found in April 2011 in Peterman Hill near Morton, Washington, by a passing motorist. Her identity was formally confirmed in 2022, though it has not been publicly disclosed. Keys also admitted to at least one murder in New York State. By late 2012, authorities had not determined the victim's age, sex, or identity, but considered his confession credible. He is further suspected in a series of crimes in Florida linked to the Boca killer. In March 2007, 52-year-old Randy Ann Melitz Gorenberg was abducted from the Boca Town Center Mall parking lot and killed within an hour, her body later found nearby. In August 2007, an unidentified woman and her young son were kidnapped from the same mall parking lot by a man wearing a mask and sunglasses. She reported glimpsing a tall, athletic man with long hair, resembling Keys. They were released unharmed after he forced her to withdraw money from an ATM. The third incident occurred in December 2007, when Nancy Bochicchio, 47, and her 7-year-old daughter, Joey Bochicchio Hauser, were shot to death in their vehicle at the same mall.
Keys is also a suspect in the disappearance of 58-year-old James Jimmy Lamar Tidwell, Jr., an electrician last seen on February 15, 2012, in Mount Enterprise, Texas. The following day, during a bank robbery in Azle, Texas, the suspect, a man resembling Tidwell wearing a white hard hat, was believed to be Keys. When questioned about a wig made of what appeared to be human hair, Keys responded cryptically, "You don't have to buy real hair to get real hair." Some potential victims initially linked to Keys were later ruled out. Cassandra, or Cassie Emerson, 12, went missing after her mother, Marlene K. Emerson, 29, was found dead in their burned trailer in Colville, Washington, in 1997. Cassie's remains were discovered in 1998, roughly 13 miles from her home. Though Keys had admitted to committing arson on a trailer in Colville and was suspected in the Emersons' deaths, another man, Charles Tatum, was arrested for the murders in December 2024. Keys was known to study the methods and psychology of other killers extensively. At his residence, investigators found numerous books on murder, both fiction and nonfiction. He repeatedly read Dean Koontz's 1995 thriller Intensity, identifying closely with the serial killer antagonist. In his youth, he studied Mindhunter, Inside the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit by John E. Douglas, and meticulously researched other notorious serial killers. Keys admired Ted Bundy, claiming similarities in methodical approaches, though he noted differences in victim selection and modus operandi. He even attempted to imitate Bundy's court escape, only to be apprehended immediately.
He also held other killers in high regard, though he avoided media attention for fear of being labeled a copycat. He disparaged Dennis Rader, calling him a wimp for showing remorse in court, while expressing admiration for those who haven't been caught. He spoke knowledgeably and enthusiastically about Alaska-based murderer Robert Hansen, saying, "Yeah, I know all about him," and claimed to know every single serial killer that's ever been written about as a personal hobby. When informed of the 2012 Aurora, Colorado shooting, he inquired about the shooter, James Holmes, reflecting his persistent interest in high-profile violent offenders. After the murder of Bill and Lorraine Keyes' acquaintance, Samantha Koenig, Keyes began demanding ransom money. Law enforcement was able to track withdrawals from her bank account as he traveled across the southwestern United States. Controversially, police initially refused to release surveillance footage showing Koenig's abduction. On the morning of March 13, 2012, Keyes was arrested in the parking lot of the Cotton Patch Cafe in Lufkin, Texas, by Texas Highway Patrol Corporal Brian Henry and Texas Ranger Stephen Rayburn. Authorities had issued a lookout bulletin for his rental vehicle after it had been linked to ATM withdrawals from Koenig's account. Officers had been monitoring hotel parking lots for out-of-state rental cars matching the description. Keyes was stopped for slightly exceeding the speed limit, and a search of his vehicle revealed cash stained with bright ink from a bank robbery die pack, as well as Koenig's ATM card and cell phone. Keyes was extradited to Alaska, where he initially claimed that the ATM card and phone had been tossed into his open car window. He was charged with bank fraud related to Koenig's accounts, but he eventually confessed to her murder. Represented by federal public defender Rich Kirtner, Keyes was indicted and his trial was scheduled for March 2013. While in custody, Keyes spoke extensively with state and federal investigators. Over several months, he voluntarily granted numerous interviews, at times cooperating to provide information about his crimes. He confessed to some murders and expressed a desire to be executed within a year, explaining that he wanted to avoid media attention to protect his young daughter and family. Investigators corroborated much of his information, though they remained cautious, suspecting that some statements could be misleading. Keyes' cooperation decreased once his identity became public, but early interviews reportedly totaled more than 40 hours, conducted by the FBI to identify additional victims and understand the full scope of his crimes. On May 23, 2012, Keyes attempted to escape during a routine hearing by using pencil shavings to pick his handcuffs. U.S. Marshals subdued him with a taser. Separately, the FBI's Houston field office sought information on his movements in Texas, highlighting the possibility of crimes across multiple regions. Portions of Keyes' recorded FBI interviews were later released to the public beginning in 2018, providing further insight into his methods and investigative strategies. In August 2013, the FBI issued a public timeline of Keyes' known travels and financial transactions, requesting tips about his activities during periods of suspected criminal activity. Investigators noted that Keyes deliberately avoided media attention, used cash for transactions, and traveled long distances, making it difficult to connect him to unsolved cases. Federal and state agencies reviewed hundreds of missing person and homicide cases, though many possible connections could not be confirmed. Additional investigative records were later released through the FBI Vault program, including interview summaries, evidence descriptions, and memoranda used to locate potential victims. The FBI also uncovered Keyes' extensive system of caches, hidden supplies buried in multiple locations across the country to aid in future crimes. 2 confirmed caches were recovered, one in Eagle River, Alaska, and another near Blake's Falls Reservoir in New York. These contained weapons and items used in the disposal of bodies. Keys indicated that other caches, including one near Green River, Wyoming, and another near Port Angeles, Washington, contained weapons, money, and other crime-related tools. This network of buried supplies was part of his deliberate strategy to remain undetected. Keys also traveled internationally, though it is unknown whether he committed any murders outside the United States. Known periods of international travel included British Columbia, April 20th to 25th, 2005, Belize, October 3rd, 2001 to October 31st, 2005, and Mexico, April 24th to May 4th, 2007, and December 11th to 25th, 2008. He also drove through Canada en route to Alaska in March 2007. Authorities believe that during his time living in Washington from 2001 until March 2007, Keys may have disposed of multiple victims. While being held at the Anchorage Correctional Complex, Keys was able to hide a razor blade in his cell, despite security measures that only allowed the supervised use of an electric razor. On the night of December 1, 2012, he took his own life by cutting his wrists and strangling himself with a rolled-up bedsheet. A suicide note was found beneath his body, described as an ode to murder, though it offered no clear information about other possible victims. In 2020, the FBI released images of 11 skulls and a pentagram that had been drawn in blood beneath Keys's bed. Investigators interpreted the 11 skulls as representing the total number of his homicide victims, though several of these cases remained unidentified at the time. One of the drawings included the phrase, "We are one," at the bottom. The FBI officially considers the number of skulls to correspond to the total number of victims Keys is believed to have killed.
Israel Keys was one of the most meticulous and disturbing serial killers in modern American history. His crimes were not impulsive or opportunistic. They were calculated, planned, and executed with an attention to detail that allowed him to move across states, evade detection, and use hidden caches to facilitate his murders. From his early assaults along rivers in Oregon to his carefully orchestrated kidnappings and murders in Washington, New York, Alaska, and beyond, Keys left a trail of terror that spanned decades. Even after his arrest, he maintained an unsettling level of control over the narrative, revealing some confessions while keeping critical details hidden, leaving investigators and the public with lingering questions about the full extent of his crimes. Despite the horror of his actions, it is crucial to remember the victims. Each life he took was someone's daughter, son, friend, or neighbor, and their stories must not be forgotten. May the souls of those taken by Keys rest in peace, and may their families find some measure of comfort, knowing that justice, however incomplete, was sought. His crimes serve as a chilling reminder of how methodical evil can hide in plain sight, often under the guise of normalcy. Keys's case also highlights the challenges law enforcement faces when dealing with a mobile, careful offender. His use of cash, long-distance travel, and lack of a predictable victim profile made it extremely difficult to link him to many unsolved crimes. Investigators were forced to piece together fragments from multiple states, relying on his own confessions, buried caches, and extensive interviews to understand the scope of his actions. The FBI's findings, including the 11 skull drawings discovered after his suicide, suggest there are victims who may never be identified, leaving a haunting uncertainty about the true scale of his crimes. What drove Israel Keys to commit these acts? How did he manage to operate undetected for so long? Are there still victims we don't know about? What can law enforcement and communities do to prevent offenders like him from evading detection in the future? These are questions that remain open, and we want to hear your thoughts.
If you found this case compelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an in-depth true crime story. Comment below with your theories or questions about keys, and let us know which other cases you'd like us to cover next. True crime teaches us lessons about vigilance, awareness, and the hidden dangers that can exist even in seemingly ordinary lives. So join the conversation and help shed light on these dark stories.